Will made in India iPhones have price advantage over made in China ones? Let us see. Apple is reportedly looking at shifting around 20% of its production to India from China. One of the reasons for Apple's consideration is the Indian government's production linked incentive scheme that was launched on April 1st. According to a report by the Economic Times, Apple still has questions regarding the 40,951 crore of PLI. If the government manages to ensure PLI benefits to Apple, the Cupertino headquartered maker of iPhone may look at producing mobile phones worth $40 billion in India, most of which will be exported. Under PLI, companies will get incentives of 4 to 6% on incremental sales over a base year for goods manufactured in India for a few sectors, including mobile phones, for 5 years. Companies will have to make minimum investment of 1000 crores over 4 years, and cumulative sales of manufactured goods should be worth 25,000 crores over 5 years. This will naturally bring down Apple's dependence on China for manufacturing. In 2018 and 19, Apple produced iPhones worth $220 billion in China, of which $185 billion was exported. Although a majority of its production will be exported, Apple is also probably looking at production in India, considering its growth potential in a market where it is planning to open its first brand store sometime in 2021, despite the fact that its sales slowed in 2018 and 19. From annual sales of 3.2 million units in 2017, it dropped to 1.7 million in 2019 and 1.9 million in 2019. Its iPhone 11 has been a success in India and sales picked up in 2020. Besides, special promotional price drops outside its home market last year did help the company to arrest declining sales. There is no doubt that India can be a really big market for Apple, like the way China has been developed. Apple also needs India to develop a market for iPhones, as sales in China were declining until it launched iPhone 11. But to achieve that, Apple will have to look at pricing of iPhones. Once it starts production in India, it will have some room for special India pricing, and that could potentially boost iPhone sales further. Let us look at the cost structure of an iPhone. According to IHS data, the component cost of iPhone 10 is less than $400. Apple sells it for a retail price of $999. So more than $500 is total of Apple's gross margin that takes care of all costs like research, development, labor, operations, and marketing, among others. In India, iPhones are sold at much higher prices because there is 20% customs duty, charges for shipping and transit insurance, and on top of that, a 12% GST. Once iPhones are made in India, the first cost that will go away is the 20% customs duty, and total payable GST will come down, as it will be calculated on the price of iPhone minus the customs duty and shipping and transit insurance cost of around 1%. To add to that, cost of making iPhones will also come down a bit because of cheaper labor in India. India's labor cost is estimated at less than $1 an hour, while that is $3.52 per hour in China. Interestingly, when Apple started manufacturing iPhones in China in 2009, the cost of labor was less than $1 an hour in China. Apple will also get special benefits under the PLI scheme. It could use some of these savings to have a special pricing for iPhones in India, which in turn would boost the company's market share. Under PLI, Apple will get 6% of incremental sales as incentive for first 2 years, 5% on third and fourth year, and 4% on the fifth year. This money can be passed on to local consumers by bringing down prices of iPhones. As a report by Foundation for Economic Education noted, the cost of iPhones would have been $2,000 if Apple produced in America. Tax-free manufacturing zones coupled with efficient component sourcing supply chain in China helped Apple to keep iPhone's price at half of a made in America iPhone. Component sourcing in India won't be as efficient as China, Most of the components required to make a mobile phone are essentially made in China, and companies and component makers have their factories close to manufacturing units. This has been developed over a long period. While some of Apple's suppliers, such as Foxconn and Wistron, have received approval for major investments in India, Apple will still have to import equipment that it needs to make final product in India. However, once Apple starts making iPhones on India, more OEMs will set up units in India. But it might take a few years before the component sourcing ecosystem is developed completely. India's PLI benefits may not be an apple to apple comparison with China's tax free manufacturing zones. The ET report says manufacturing in India has about 10% disadvantages if compared with China. Now, PLI was only trying to address up to 6%. The government has been trying to address the rest with other SOPs and tax benefits to the companies. The PLI just came into effect on April 1st, at a time when the whole world is fighting the COVID-19 pandemic. For Apple, ultimately the price of a made in India iPhone may not be much cheaper compared to that of the made in China one. Thank you for a patient hearing. In order to get more such videos, kindly subscribe this channel and click on bell button to receive new videos in real time. Please like the video in order to encourage to make more such videos.